G'day, Stu here from UAVfutures, and today, well, we're going to be reviewing this. Now, the name of this one, this is the Eachine Falcon, and I got this one sent to me from Banggood. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to be sticking it on the bench and sort of checking it out. This one comes pretty much ready to run, so you've got your battery, your charger, and your radio, and it's hooked up and it's all ready to go. So anyway, let's get started and check it out. Alrighty, so here's the Falcon on the bench, and the first thing I want to do, well, there's two things actually straight away. I do want to point out I'm rocking some different props on here, so I've taken out and given it a bit of a fly already, and I did put some different props on here. But the second thing I want to do actually is point out is just how heavy this thing is, because it's feeling pretty heavy. So let's whack it on the scales and see exactly how heavy it is. So this is a 4-inch quad. Turn our scales on here and take your bets. How much is this going to weigh? Because it definitely feels like it's got a bit of weight. 368 grams. Now, just for a bit of a comparison, I'm going to put on my Martian, so my Martian 2 or V2 right here. So, and this is a 4-inch frame, 384 grams, and that is with a bit of a GoPro holder as well. So definitely, it feels very, very heavy for just a 4-inch quad. So you can definitely see the difference between there. This thing should be a lot lighter. Rightio, so I've just put this little freeze frame in here because I don't think it was too clear in that comparison, but what I was trying to do was sort of show you just how close this 4-inch Falcon is that it's almost the same weight, just a couple of grams lighter than a 5-inch Martian. So that full-on race quad there with the Martian is I guess a sort of standard racing quad, and this little 4-inch thing is fairly heavy, so sort of getting to similar weights but very, very different performances. Now what we're going to do in this review, I guess we'll work our way around the outside and then talk about how it's sort of made up, and then before we roll some flight footage towards the end, we'll open it up and we'll have a look at the components on the inside. Alrighty. Rightio, so starting out here on the motors, we are rocking some MT 2204 2300 kV motors. So not a bad motor, but definitely not a good motor. So there's these are probably about 18 months old in my opinion. So they're not putting out the most thrust, and I think these are actually some of the same motors as I got on my very first Emax Nighthawk. I had some old MTs, so not the best motors right there. But you know, they're gonna do the job, I guess, or just. And underneath that, you have something very, very interesting. And you've got these, and these are on all 4 of the motors. And these are some tilted motor mounts. So these tilted motor mounts, what they actually aim to do is help your quad to get a little bit more speed. So it's going to have less drag when it's going through the air. And they're made up of sort of this clear plastic or this clear polycarbonate sort of plastic. I think it's polycarbonate, but that's very, I guess, a lot of people tried to do this back in the day, and tilted motor mounts were a thing about 12 months ago, and then everybody sort of moved away from them and figured they could just put more camera angle on and they'd just go faster that way. So that is definitely one thing that I think this quad is trying to do something interesting, but it's definitely not worth it. So if it was up to me, I'd probably take those off because they are also heavy. They do also have little lights in them though, so I did think that was pretty cool that they do have some little LEDs, so they look cool, but they're just adding a lot of weight and creating a lot of turbulence when it's flying through the air, and definitely not really as beneficial as you think they might be. Now right here you've got your ESCs, and what I'm going to have to do, I'm going to have to sort of take it apart and plug it in to find out what ESCs there are, because I couldn't find a little instruction book or anything that came with this, so we'll definitely have to do some investigating on those ESCs. Moving towards the back of the quad, you do have a little LED bar at the back right here, and something, now this is a bit of a cool feature I do like. Your XT60 is secured very snugly in the frame, so it doesn't look like it's going to break or snap off, so I really, really like that. And then you have this tiny little VTX right here with easy access to these dip switches, easy access to the dip switch. And this is one of the better features of the quad actually, in my opinion, is that when you are changing bands and channels, you can see exactly which band it's on and exactly which channel with these little LEDs in here in the VTX. So a good choice of the VTX. At the back right here, you've got your VTX antenna, and that's going to be interesting to see just how that is soldered on. So if that's a pigtail or if that is directly hooked up to the VTX, because that could be a bit of a weak point in a crash. The antenna right here, now this is RP SMA, so you need to be wary of that if you're going, depending on how much stuff you have. A lot of my antennas, or 99% of my antennas, are SMA, so this would be incompatible with that, and that means that the pin is on, I guess, the inside part on the VTX, and there is a hole on your antenna. And jumping to the other end at the front of the quad, you do have have 2 LEDs, and then you do have this camera right here as well. So this camera is a little bit of a, I guess, a mix between a board camera. I've never seen this actual camera before, and I believe it might be a CCD camera, but we're going to have to open it up to have a bit of a better look. And then you do have it is on an angle, so it's worth noting that looks like it's on about a 25-degree angle right there, and there's 2 slits, so I don't know why it's in the first one, because it is sticking out a little bit. I guess if you just pushed it back a little bit, these 2 slits right here, you'd be able to have a bit of a better protected camera. So that's a bit of a run through around the outside. Now let's have a look at the frame, and this is actually a good part right here. You can see it is one sort of unibody, so the whole frame right here is made up of one piece, which does mean if you break an arm, you're going to have to replace the whole thing. But in my opinion, I've never actually broken a unibody frame, and I've had some very, very heavy crashes. But let's have a look at how thick this one is. Alrighty, so it is coming in at, make sure I get it on a good part, about 3 millimeters thick. So a little bit tricky to sort of measure because we've got some ESCs in the way and stuff, but yeah, definitely coming in at about 3 millimeters. So look, it probably would be better if it was a 4 millimeter frame, but for a unibody, I'm more than happy to fly around with a 3 millimeter frame. So I think that's totally fine. And so I think that's a really strong point in the frame, that it has one solid base plate. These dip switches right here, I have no real idea what they're sort of for. Now, if they're for configuring the VTX, I'm a little bit confused, because you also have this big window on the top right here. So I'm definitely not, if you know exactly what these are for, please drop it in the comments below. So that's very interesting. What we should do, I think, we've had a little bit of a look around the outside. Let's open it up and see what's inside. Alrighty, so here it is, and this is packed in here. I'm amazed at how much stuff they've sort of crammed in here in this sort of low profile quad. So right here, this is the receiver. There goes another battery of mine, always going off. Right here, this is the receiver that's going to be coming with the radio that comes with it, because it does come with a radio, and we'll talk about that as well. But that is rocking PWM. That's connected up here. Now this is actually one of the stronger points of the craft. This is an SP F3 racing board, so they're great. I've used them a lot of times in the past. I'm not the biggest fan of these little plugs on this board, but it's definitely a solid F3 board. So definitely a pretty good board inside here. One of the better components of the quad. Right here again, you've got your VTX, and I do worry in a hard crash just how well is this going to hold up, and is any of these little parts going to snap right here. On the bottom, you can see you have this massive PDB, so this PDB is running across the whole bottom of the frame, and I think that is definitely a weak point, because in my opinion, these things are very, very breakable, and you want them as small as possible. I don't even know why it needs to be that big, actually. I'm sure you could do a lot of this with some simple bits of wire, so I don't know why that is so big. Right here you can see again, you've got your soldered in XT60, and if you look underneath, it doesn't look like it's the best solder job in my opinion. It definitely looks like it has some things going on here that probably could be done a little bit better. Now, I'm not 100% sure what this is. Is this possibly an OSD? I don't know exactly. So definitely it feels like it's got a button there, so I'm not 100% sure what that could be actually, because it's usually the only buttons I see are on a receiver. So definitely drop a comment down below if you know exactly what this is, because that might be a little bit beyond me. It almost looks like a flight controller, but of course it can't be that, and of course it's not the receiver, because we've got the receiver right here, which does look like it's been hacked away to make fit. Actually, now I'm looking with a little bit closer, it looks like someone's been cutting off the end right there. And then towards the front we've got our camera. Now this little camera at the front, you do have the option taking it out to have a look, to switch it from PAL to NTSC, which is nice. And then I'm going to slide it back in and recess it back a little bit further than where it was the first time, so it should be a little bit better protected in a crash. But to be honest, I don't know how much flight time this thing's going to be getting anyway. But overall, there's a ton of stuff crammed inside this quad, and I'm 99% sure that is the OSD, but definitely if I'm wrong, drop a comment down below, because I'd love to know about that. What we're going to be doing, let's stick it back together, and then let's talk about what else comes in the kit, because you do get a radio, a battery, and a charger as well, because it is ready to fly. Alrighty, so now we've looked at the quad, let's have a look at what else comes in this kit. And this is probably one of the stronger parts of the kit in terms of that it comes with everything you need to get up and get flying. So some of the boring parts over here, you've got some little foam legs that you can choose to stick on or not. These are the sort of props that it came with, so very, very similar to what I was running. And they're 40 by 45 bullnose props. And then you've got some little sort of camera attachments and a little GoPro plate as well if you do want to use this. Although I do think that this quad would struggle if it was going to carry a GoPro. We'll talk about this transmitter in a minute, but this is what's over here. So over on this side we have a tiny little charger and a 25C 1500 milliamp hour 3S battery. Look, that's actually a pretty good size, and I really like the weight, I guess, of that battery. To get 1500 milliamp hours in that sort of slim size, I think is fantastic. So that's a very, very nice little compact battery. But it's only 25C, so you're really not going to be sucking very much juice out of this thing at all. I really think you need at least double, recommended maybe 3 times a C rating, so a 70C battery on something this size, because some of the best quads out there are sucking down a ton of amps, and this thing is just going to have heaps of voltage sag if you try to pull that much out of it. This little charger right here, I'm actually really liking these chargers because they are so simple just to plug into the wall. I'm a little bit skeptical in their safety, so I don't know if they do the best job, but they're definitely very simple to use. And if you've got somewhere that's I guess fireproofed, or you're feeling confident that if something did go wrong it wouldn't cause too much damage, I love how all you have to do is simply, I've got a very dirty battery here, but I can use this one here. All you have to do is simply plug it in straight by the balance lead, that's it, and it will charge each cell individually at 300 milliamp hours. So that's probably going to take about 2 hours to charge this battery right here. And you'd plug that in straight into the 3-cell port, and you can see how each individual cell is going. And now let's talk about the radio. So this is like the i6 radio, and I've seen a ton of variations of this. They're all different and all rebranded. A very, very budget radio. So it feels very, very light on the sticks. It really doesn't have very many options whatsoever. On the back here, it takes 4 AA batteries, and you've got a little trainer port. I've written on this one in lead pencil. You can see clear, bang good. That was how I knew which quad this one was bound to. You've got 4 of the little switches up here, and then you've just got your sticks, some little trims, and some menu buttons. But here's the part I want to talk about. In however the way that this Falcon is set up, mine pretty much didn't do anything. So this was a real tricky one to fly. I'm not 100% sure what's going on because it's using PWM, and I don't know how they've wired it up, because the LEDs do work in some strange different ways. Like sometimes it looks like they have blinkers and stuff, but I couldn't change any of these auxiliary switches. I couldn't set an arm switch to any of these, and the only way I could arm the quad was the old school way of holding it down to the right, and that would arm the quad, and then it would be good to go, and the motors would not spin, so it was a little bit tricky to tell if it was armed or not. And then to disarm, I would just drop the throttle to 0 and it would disarm. So it was very, very strange. And then sometimes if I went this way, which would traditionally be disarm, it would go full throttle. So luckily I learned that before the props were on it, but for some reason it would just go a bit haywire. So I was very, very skeptical testing this thing, I guess, when I first took it out, because it was outside and I was worried, like, am I going to get my quad back? Is it just going to disappear and fly away? So it's very, very difficult to review a quad when you don't have one, so I was a little bit worried about that. But fortunately, when I was flying it around, it did arm fine on the day anyway, and I was able to fly it around. But flying it around is very different to enjoying flying around. So I'm about to roll some flight footage, and I just want to talk about how it was in the air and how did it handle, because that's probably the most important thing. So how was the flying experience when flying with the Falcon? So I'm going to roll that now. Alrighty, so here it is, and probably one of the first things that I was not expecting right here watching this back, I actually get some sound. So you can actually hear, if I stop talking a bit, you can actually hear the sound of the quad. So it is transmitting some audio as well. Now, now that that's out of the way, it is very, very sluggish, and the rates are very, very low. I think I took this up here, and if you just look at that artificial horizon it's got on the OSD, and I don't know what all those letters and numbers are on there. I don't know what that 2 and 3D and all those options are. At least it knows it's in acro mode, but that artificial horizon is lagging so far behind. I think I go to do a roll here, so it is very, very slow. I only just made that, so its rates are extremely low, but that wouldn't be too hard to bump up if you did that in clean flight. But once again, this is just how it flies straight out of the box. But in my opinion, I found this thing very difficult to fly. Look, I don't think I'm the world's best pilot by any means, but I definitely think I've been flying for over a year now, and I do have some experience when it comes to flying these things around. And I found this thing very, very difficult. I think I tried to hit this gate. Oh no, this was my crazy spin that I had. So I've never had quite so many spins ever in my life as just then. But even hitting that gate at not a very high speed was very, very difficult. So overall, yeah, I really felt like this was a bit of a letdown in terms of flying because it didn't handle very well, and I wouldn't feel comfortable recommending this one to anybody as a first-time flyer, or even just recommending it normally actually, because it's very difficult to fly. And in the state it is, I think it needs a lot of changes to make things happen, because it wasn't even that enjoyable to fly around, and that's what FPV should be all about, is actually just having fun. So there it is, there's my review of the Eachine Falcon, and I gotta say, this quad is somewhat of a letdown. Now, usually you can find one or two positive things, but I think this one, with this day and age and where we are in the hobby, this thing is well behind the times. It's kind of heavy, it doesn't have the best motors, it felt really, really sluggish, and I'm not 100% sure on its design. It's got things like these angled motor mounts, which I guess are a little bit behind in the technology as well. We don't really use them much more, and for the price, you can get stuff that is a lot better for a very, very similar price. So I would be a little bit wary if I was going to recommend one of these to somebody, because I definitely think if you shop around, there's definitely some cooler things out there. And then I guess, and the other thing, it was just really hard to fly. So I don't know what was going on with the radio transmitter or the radio and the receiver right there, and it just felt so sluggish in the air. And when you're flying around, that OSD just felt like it was miles behind what was actually happening. Anyway, subscribe for more FPV related content. I'm going to leave you with the rest of this flight footage from this one, or the DVR footage anyway, because I didn't get it to carry a GoPro because it'll be even more sluggish. But subscribe for more FPV related content, and as always, happy flying! We're actually at the end anyway of the DVR footage there, but one interesting thing here, I do notice it says stall flashing up on the OSD, so at least that bit's a little bit interesting.